When people think about abuse, money isn't always the first thing that comes to mind. But for many men, it's one of the quietest and most effective ways they are controlled. It doesn't always look like someone taking your wallet or draining your account. Sometimes it's a little more subtle. It's a slow erosion of your say in how your money is earned, spent, or even discussed. So if you've ever found yourself working hard, paying the bills, providing for the life you share, and still feeling like the money isn't yours, or if you've felt like no matter how much you contribute, the financial ground under your feet is still never stable, then it might be a little bit more than just financial stress. It can be the result of something deliberate, something designed to keep you dependent and uncertain, and it has a name. It could be financial abuse. Financial abuse is the exertion of control over another person's access, understanding of, or autonomy with money. It takes something practical, the resources you need to live, and turns it into a tool of dominance. At its core, is not about financial skill or who earns more. It's actually about who decides, who has authority, and who gets to define financial reality. An abuser uses money to destabilize you, limit your independence, and keep you dependent on them emotionally and practically. And it often starts subtly. You might hear, I'm better at handling the bills, or let's just keep things simple. I'll manage the accounts. But over time, those simple arrangements become rigid rules. You stop having visibility into spending. You have to ask before making purchases. You second guess yourself whenever you touch your own earnings. And an abuser does this because controlling money means controlling freedom. If they can dictate what you can access, they can influence where you go, what you do, and even how safe you feel. They can make you believe you're bad with money or that you owe them for sacrifices they never actually made. Financial abuse is rarely isolated, it's often paired with other tactics like criticism and guilt and intimidation. So the control actually feels normal. And over time, it conditions you to accept less and less autonomy until you're living within rules that you never agreed to. There are 8 ways men can be financially abused, and is the focus of today's episode of the Blueprint of Family Violence Against Men. If this content is of help to you, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your voice might just help another man find his. Let's dive into this particular topic. The first way you're financially abused is through the premise of what's yours is mine, what's mine is mine. This tactic enforces an unspoken but rigid financial double standard. What you earn is seen as shared, while what they earn is seen as personal. It's not about active control or secrecy, it's about expectation. You're expected to pay, you're expected to provide, you're expected to foot the bill, cover the shortfall, carry the weight. But when the roles are reversed, the same expectations do not apply. This imbalance is not negotiated, it's assumed. Your income becomes a couple's resource. Theirs remains independent. And if you challenge the setup, you're often framed as stingy or selfish or just not a man. What makes this tactic really manipulative isn't just the uneven split, it's the presumption that the disparity is natural, deserved, or gendered. Over time, this framing can erode confidence, create resentment, and instill guilt around your own financial needs or boundaries. The second way you're financially abused is through superiority framing. Superiority framing is when your partner assumes financial control by positioning themselves as inherently more capable. They present themselves as the rational one, the financially literate one, the expert, and frame you as emotional, impulsive, or just downright incompetent. It's not a conversation about skills, it's a narrative that grants them authority and strips you of yours. This isn't about who does the budget, it's about who gets to make financial decisions and who gets dismissed. Your views are minimized before they've even been heard in full. You may even be told, you just don't understand how money works, or that your opinions just don't make sense. Over time, this becomes the justification for authoritative control, not because of your track record, but because of their self declared superiority. For many men, this tactic may not start with failure. It can start with a division of labor. One partner earns, the other manages. And at first, it makes sense. You're in it together after all. But over time, that balance can quietly shift. What began as delegation becomes a demotion. She assumes the role of household financial expert, not through discussion, but through declaration. You're told you don't get it, and that you're careless, and that your opinions around your finances don't count. And the most dangerous part is you actually begin to believe it. Even when you started out confident, even when you've managed budgets professionally, the constant drip of correction and condescending comments rewires your self trust. That's not just a division of roles, it's the erosion of agency wrapped up in the language of superiority. The third way you're financially abused is through authoritarian control. Authoritarian control is the outright imposition of financial decisions, spending rules, or budgetary restrictions without discussion, collaboration, or consent. It's not framed as partnership, it's framed as law. The abuser casts themselves as the financial authority and expects obedience, not input. Your role isn't to contribute, it's to comply. This tactic differs from superiority framing, where your competence is subtly undermined. Here, the dynamic is less about justification and more about domination. It sounds like, I have decided, or this is how it's going to be, you don't get a say. For men, this can be especially hard to spot and even harder to name because we grow up believing that financial control is the price of peace within the household. You might not even realize just how much you have been edited out of the equation until you're the one asking for access to your own earnings. The fourth way you're abused is through explosive retribution. Explosive retribution is punitive control tactics where any financial decision, no matter how reasonable, is met with disproportionate rage, blame, or punishment. It's not about the money itself, it's about power. The abuser uses emotional volatility to make you feel unsafe with your own spending. Over time, the message becomes clear. If you spend without permission, you will pay for it. This is distinct from authoritarian control, which enforces obedience through rules. Because explosive retribution doesn't set the rules, it enforces control through fear. The response is unpredictable but severe, creating an environment where silence and inaction feel safer than autonomy. For men, this can be particularly destabilizing. As providers, we're often expected to manage and spend in ways that support the household. But when spending becomes a trigger for explosions, even when it's our own income, it undermines both your role and your confidence. You learn to hide, delay, or avoid financial choices altogether, not because they're wrong, but because they've made to feel dangerous. The fifth way you're financially abused is through double standards. Double standards in financial abuse occurs when one partner enforces strict limitations on the other's spending while allowing themselves far greater freedom and indulgence. This is not about mutual budgeting or differing needs, it's about control masters thrift applied unequally. The victim is made to justify every basic purchase, while the abuser grants themselves unrestricted access to shared funds. Over time, this imbalance fosters resentment, diminishes financial agency, and reinforces a hierarchy where one person's needs and desires and comforts are always prioritized over the others. You're taught to provide, to endure, to be grateful for what little you're allowed, and to expect nothing in return. So when you're sleeping on worn sheets using dollar store shampoo and cutting your own hair while your partner splurges regularly without question, the message is clear. Your needs don't matter. You're not worth spending on, even with your own money. The sixth way you're financially abused is through hidden spending. Hidden spending is a betrayal of shared trust in financial transparency. It involves deliberate concealment of income, purchases, or financial accounts by one partner, not out of forgetfulness, but to maintain control, evade accountability, and protect unilateral access to money. In a relationship where finances are assumed to be shared, this secrecy is not neutral, it's manipulative. This tactic weaponizes the expectation of trust. Most men enter a long term relationship assuming honesty around money is mutual, that you're building a life together. Hidden spending exploits that assumption. It turns transparency into a one way street. You're expected to contribute, but not permitted to inquire. For many men, the betrayal runs deeper than money. It's not just that funds are hidden, it's that the partnership they believed they were building was never mutual. You may have entered the relationship with an assumption of honesty, of shared contribution, of mutual decision making. So when accounts are concealed, earnings go undeclared, and spending is distorted, it doesn't just destabilize your financial security, it fractures your reality. What makes this so disorientating is that the violation is quiet. There's no confrontation, no announcement, just a creeping sense that something is not right. But every time you ask, you're made to feel foolish or controlling for doing so. Over time, you stop asking, you learn to doubt your curiosity, you convince yourself that it's not worth attention, and in that silence, your agency fades. The seventh way you are financially abused is through career sabotage. Career sabotage is deliberate interference with your ability to build, maintain, or grow your professional life. It's not always overt because it's small, persistent disruptions that undermine focus, availability, or energy. Other times, it's open resistance to your career altogether, discouraging opportunities, refusing support, or making you feel selfish for pursuing growth. In abusive dynamics, work becomes a threat, not to the family, but to the abuser's control. If you're occupied, confident, or financially autonomous, you become harder to manipulate. Career sabotage is a tactic that keeps you dependent, depleted, and emotionally torn between what you need to do and what you're allowed to do. This sabotage can target your time, your ambition, your energy, or your confidence. It might look like late night arguments before important meetings, or withholding childcare during work hours, creating crises when you're focused elsewhere, or guilt tripping you for not putting the family first. Over time, your career becomes a source of punishment, not pride. The eighth way you're financially abused is through guilt based debt. Guilt based spending is a manipulation tactic where one partner justifies financial indulgence by assigning emotional blame to the other. It's not just about money, it's about framing their desires as needs and your resistance to that as cruelty. The abuser leverages false narratives of sacrifice and suffering or self denial to make their spending feel morally earned and to make your hesitation feel selfish or abusive. This creates a double bind. You're trying to save, plan, protect the future, but your cast is withholding, controlling, or uncaring. You end up funding their wants while cutting back on your own needs because saying no triggers emotional landmines. The tactic exploits your sense of fairness, your desire to care, and your fear of being seen as the bad guy. It's not budgeting, it's not healthy self care, it's control masked as emotional need. Living through financial abuse as a man is uniquely disorientating. We're taught to measure our worth in provision and how well we can support the people that we love. So when that provision is weaponized, it hits at the core of our identity. You start to question whether you're failing, even as you carry more than your share. It's not just about the money, it's about being edited out of decisions, about having to ask permission for things that you've earned, about being made to feel like a reckless child in the very area where you're always being responsible. The erosion is not about finances, it's personal. Financial abuse is not about who earns more, it's about who decides and who dominates, and who controls access to the lifelines that money can provide. When you start to name these patterns, you can reclaim your truth. This isn't about being bad with money, it's about making sure that you never get to choose. This is Stand Again, lived experience platform for male survivors of family violence. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Your voice might just help another man find his. If you're looking for one on one support, you can book coaching with a member of the Stand Again team. Simply visit standagain.com.au, where you will also find grounded information on surviving and recovering from family violence as a man. As always, remember that no matter how many times you've been knocked down, you can stand again.